जनवल्लभा जय गिरिवरधारी जय गोपीजनवल्लभा जय गिरिवरधारी यशोदानन्दन व्रज जनुरञ्जन यशोदानन्दन व्रज जनुरञ्जन यमुनतीराय वनचारि यमुनतीराय वनचारि जय राधा माधव जय कुंज बिहारी जय राधा माधव जय कुंज बिहारी जय राधा माधव जय कुंज बिहारी हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे जय राधा गिरिधारी राधा गिरिधारी राधे जय राधा गिरिधारी राधा गिरिधारी राधे जय जगन्नाथ जय बलदेव जय सुभद्रा जय गौरानिताय जय गौरानिताय नित्य गौर हरि बोल नित्य गौर हरि बोल जय जय प्रभुपाद जय जय प्रभुपाद तो जय जय श्री राधा गिरिधारी भगवान की जय जय जगन्नाथ बलदेव सुभद्रा मैया की जय जय गौर निताई की जय श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय. So once again Hare Krishna. So we'll start off by reading Srila Prabhupada's Leelamrita. So I will share my screen, so please just bear with me. So can I please just confirm if everyone can see my screen?
Yes, Mataji.
Okay, cool. So I'm just going to move this to the side. Okay. Okay, let's leave it there. Cool. So Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. So we are reading from Srila Prabhupada's Leelamrita, chapter 37. The title of the chapter is The Land is Yours. And if I can just please confirm, I'm starting from any sincere visitor. Have I got the right place? Okay, I'll just start. Any sincere visitor would be charmed by the beauty of ISKCON's Mayapur project and would perceive that here indeed was the spiritual world. And the devotees living in Mayapur, by remaining constantly immersed in singing Hare Krishna Kirtan and discussing the philosophy of Krishna consciousness, would be able to convince any intelligent visitor that the teachings of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu were the highest truth. The devotees would explain the philosophy of the absolute truth, which would enable visitors to comprehend actual spiritual truth beyond sectarian religious dogma. Furthermore, the continuous Hare Krishna Kirtan and the blissful devotees engaged in a wide variety of services to Lord Krishna would devotees engaged in a wide variety of services to Lord Krishna would demonstrate that Bhakti Yoga was the simplest, most direct process for meditating on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. While staying in ISKCON's Mayapur city, a person would quickly become a devotee of the Lord and begin chanting and dancing in ecstasy. Srila Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada was demonstrating how the world could be spiritualized by linking material things with the Supreme Personality of Godhead through Bhakti Yoga. And why shouldn't such spiritual feats surpass the achievements of the materialists? Prabhupada was sorry to learn through the Indian High Commissioner that the Prime Minister could not attend the cornerstone laying ceremony in Mayapur. Yet he took it as Krishna's desire. He said he would invite a prominent Vaishnava to officiate, or he might do it himself. On the whole, he wrote, it was Lord Chaitanya's desire that a Vaishnava shall lay down the cornerstone instead of asking some material man or woman to perform the holy work. So I'll stop there. Jai Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. So I'll share my screen again. So can I please just confirm that everyone can see my screen?
Yes, Mataji, we can see.
So once again, Hare Krishna, dear devotees, please accept my humble obeisances and thank you for joining today's online Srimad Bhagavatam class. As I usually say, and I repeat, I have no qualifications of my own, but through the mercy of Srila Prabhupada, Guru, and like-minded devotees like all of you present in the forum, I'm able to say a few words. I do seek your blessings. Please kindly bless me so that whatever I have to share today, although part of it is my own realizations, that it is aligned to scriptural injunction. So today we continue to read from Srimad Bhagavatam, we're covering Canto 5. The title of the chapter is the title of the canto is The Creative Impetus, and the chapter that we're reading from is chapter 18, titled The Prayers Offered to the Lord by the Residents of Jambudvip, and today we will be covering verse 4. So Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayana Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Mudirayet Nashta Prayashu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Yuktam Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Nashtike Shrinvatam Swakatha Krishna Punya Sharvana Kirtana Hridayantasto Bhadrani Vidunoti Surit Satam. So today's verse 4. I'll recite it. Vadanti vishvam kavayasmanashvaram pashyanti cha adhyatma vido vipaschitaha tathapi muhyanti tvaja mayaya shuvishmitam kritam ajam natosmitam. I'll repeat it. Vadanti vishvam kavayasmanashvaram pashyanti cha adhyatma vido vipaschitaha tathapi muhyanti tvaja mayaya shuvishmitam kritam ajam natosmitam. Would anyone like to recite the verse?
Yes, Mataji, I am trying.
Thank you.
Badanti Bishang Kabayashmanasharang Pashyanti Chadhatma Vidovipaschitaha Tathapi Muihanti Tabajmayaya Subishmitam Kritam Ajam Natuhashmitam Tam. Hare Krishna Mataji.
Hare Krishna. Anyone else?
Hare Krishna Mataji, may I try please?
Yes, of course, Mataji.
Vadanti Vishwam Kavyasam Nashwaram Pashyanti Chadhyatma Vido Vipaschitaha Tathapi Muhanti Tvajamayaya Svavishmitam Krityam Ajimnatoshmitam. Thank you, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Mataji. Anyone else?
Hare Krishna Mataji, can I try please?
Yes, yes, of course.
Thank you. Vadanti Vishwam Kavayasmanashwaram Pashyanti Chadhyatma Vido Vipaschitaha Tatapi Muhyanti Tavajmayaya Suvishmitam Krityam Ajam Natosmi Tam. Thank you, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you. Anyone else? If not, then would anyone like to read the word for word meaning?
Yes, Mataji, I can.
Go ahead.
Vadanti, they say authoritatively, Vishwam, the entire material creation, Habayaha, great learned sagesses. Kabayaha, great learned sagesses. Sma, certainly. Nashvaram, perishable. Pashyayanti, they see in trance, Cha, also Adhyatma Vidha, who have realized spiritual knowledge, Vipuschitaha, very learned scholars, Tatha Upi, still, Muhyanti, become illusioned, Taba, your, Aja, O unborn one, Mayaya, by the illusory energy, Shu Bishmitam, most wonderful, Kritayam, activity, Ajam, unto the Supreme Unborn One, Natashma Ashmi, I offer my obeisances, Tam, unto him. Thank you, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. We'll move on to the translation. Would anyone like to read the translation?
Hare Krishna Mataji. Translation by Srila Prabhupada ki jai. O unborn one, learned Vedic scholars who are advanced in spiritual knowledge certainly know that this material world is perishable, as do logicians and philosophers. In trance, they realize the factual position of this world, and they preach the truth as well. Yet, even they are sometimes bewildered by your illusory energy. This is your own wonderful pastime. Therefore, I can understand that your illusory energy is very wonderful, and I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. We move on to the purport. Would anyone like to read the purport? I've divided the purport into two sections, so maybe we can take turns reading the first slide, and then we'll move on to the second section.
Okay, Mataji.
And with Mataji, may I?
Mataji, go ahead. Yeah.
Purport by Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Not only does the illusory energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead act on the conditioned soul within the material world, but sometimes it also acts on the most advanced learned scholars who factually know the constitutional position of this material world through realization. As soon as someone thinks, I am this material body, aham mameti, and everything is in relationship with this material world is mine, he is an illusion, moha. This illusion caused by the material energy, especially on the conditioned souls, but it sometimes also acts on liberated souls as well. A liberated soul is a person who has sufficient knowledge of this material world and is therefore unattached to the bodily conception of life. But because of association with the modes of material nature for a very long time, even liberated souls sometimes become captivated by the illusory energy due to inattentiveness in the transcendental position. May I stop there, Mataji?
Yeah. Thank you, Mataji. And we'll move to the next one.
Yeah, I can continue. Therefore, Lord Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita 7.14, Mam eva prapadante mayametam tarantite. Only those who surrender unto me can overcome the influence of the material energy. Therefore, no one should think of himself as a liberated person, immune to the influence of Maya. Everyone should very cautiously execute devotional service by rigidly following regulative principles. Thus, he will remain fixed at the lotus feet of the Lord. Otherwise, a little inattention will create havoc. We have already seen an example of this in the case of Maharaja Bharat. Maharaja Bharat was undoubtedly a great devotee, but because he turned his attention slightly toward a small deer, he had to suffer two more births, one as a deer and another as a Brahmana, Jada Bharat. Afterward, he was liberated and went back home, back to Godhead. The Lord is always prepared to excuse his devotee, but if a devotee takes advantage of the Lord's leniency and purposefully commits mistakes again and again, the Lord will certainly punish him by letting him fall down into the clutches of the illusory energy. In other words, theoretical knowledge acquired by studying the Vedas is insufficient to protect one from the clutches of Maya. One must strongly adhere to the lotus feet of the Lord devotional service. This one's position is secure. Thank you, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Mataji.
Krishna.
So before we discuss the verse in detail and share reflections, let's just recite the Mangala Charan. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitamena Tasme Shri Guru Vainama. I was born in the darkest ignorance, and my spiritual master opened my eyes with the torch of knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances unto him. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasati Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So just reading the translation again. O unborn one, learned Vedic scholars who are advanced in spiritual knowledge certainly know that this material world is perishable, as do other logicians and philosophers. In trance, they realize the factual position of this world, and they preach the truth as well. Yet even they are sometimes bewildered by your illusory energy. This is your own wonderful pastime. Therefore, I can understand that your illusory energy is very wonderful, and I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. So, in terms of background and context, just listening to all the classes by previous devotees, they have really presented previous classes very wonderfully, explaining them really, really well. And so just to quickly summarize a few key points before we get to today's verse. As we understand, in Jambudvip, there are 9 varshas or divisions, and in every varsha, the Lord is being worshipped. So on this slide, we see a list of the varshas, the presiding deity for that division, and the worshippers. We also understand that the central theme of this chapter is that in each varsha, the Lord is being the Lord is worshipable, and therefore, as Srila Prabhupada states in the chapter description, that, and I quote, following in the footsteps of devotees, one should know that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the only worshipable deity. Everyone should accept this proposal and worship the Lord. As stated in Bhagavad Gita 15.15, Vedas cha sarva aham eva vidya. The purpose of studying all Vedic literature is to worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna. If after studying all the Vedic literature, one does not awaken his dominant love for the Supreme Lord, it is to be understood that he has labored for nothing. Unquote. So the key point being that Lord Sri Krishna is the only worshipable deity. So from verses 2 to 6 of this chapter, with verse 4 being covered today, we see that the ruler of Bhadrashvara and his intimate associates and all the residents of the Varsha, they are worshipping the presiding deity, Hayagriva. Now, Hayagriva is an incarnation of Lord Vishnu, and as we have heard in the introduction of this chapter, that at the end of each kalpa, when the demon Ajnana steals Vedic knowledge from Lord Brahma, then the Supreme Personality of Godhead incarnates as Lord Hayagriva and delivers the Vedas back to Brahma. Now, a question may be asked that why is this form of the Lord being worshipped and not any other form? So Srila Prabhupada says in verse 1 that just as Lord Shiva worships Shankarshana in Ilavarta Varsha, likewise in Bhadrashva Varsha, the ruler accompanied by his intimate associates and all the residents of the land, they worship the plenary expansion of Vasudeva known as Heya Shirsha, and Lord Heya Shirsha is also known as Lord Hayagriva, and they worship this form of the Supreme Lord because it is very, very dear to the devotees. So the reason given here is that based on the Leela that occurs in a particular place, the presiding deity of that place becomes very dear to the devotees because they develop a certain bhava or rasa in serving that form. So, for example, the residents of Ayodhya would naturally become great devotees of Lord Ram. Now, I'm sure most of you would know of this Leela where Narad Muni once asked Lord Vishnu this question. And so Lord Vishnu has an example of actually showing to Narad the responses or the answers to his questions. So what Lord Vishnu said to Narad Muni was, I ask you to go and ask Hanuman that I am calling him. So Lord Vishnu is calling him. So Narad goes and he says to Hanuman that Lord Vishnu would like to see you. So Hanuman, being a great devotee, obviously did go to see Lord Vishnu. So when Narad comes back, and then Lord Vishnu says to him, now you go and ask Hanuman that Ram is calling him. So without asking questions, Narad Muni goes and he asks Hanuman. So what does Hanuman do? As soon as he hears the word Ram, even before Narad finishes his question, he's already left. So he just shoots off. So the point is that although in both instructions were followed by Hanuman, for the second one, his bhava was different. So immediately his love for Ram surpasses everything else. So that is the reason given in terms of why the worshippers are worship a particular form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Krishna also says in Bhagavad Gita 7.21 that I am seated in everyone's heart as a super soul, and as soon as one desires to worship some demigod, he uses the word demigod in this example, he says that I make his faith steady so that he can devote himself to that particular deity. So Krishna fans the desire, and so devotees pray to that particular form based on their love for that particular form. However, for the purposes of this verse and in this chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, the key point to note is that all the worshippers in all the different varshas are worshipping the Supreme Lord and not a particular demigod or some other random superstar, as we get to see in this age of Kali. So moving on, in verse 4, in a nutshell, is quite a sombering verse. Or we can say it is quite a morose, worrying verse. On the other hand, if we are to look at this in a correct perspective, all verses in the Srimad Bhagavatam are beautiful in the sense that all the verses are purifying and each verse is giving us a powerful lesson which we must learn from. Now, this verse, however, at least to me, I found it quite sobering because it tells us that even after practicing devotional service for a very long time, even liberated souls can sometimes face challenges. Now, Srila Prabhupada, in a Back to Godhead magazine, used to write that devotees were actually on the royal road to Krishna. So there's a term called on the royal road to heaven or on the royal road, meaning that on the best road. However, this verse reminds us that even on the royal road, accidents can happen. So we must always never let go of our guard. So that's the key theme or lesson from this verse. So, why even long-term practitioners can fall down? There are two reasons that Srila Prabhupada gives in the purport. The first one that he gives is that Krishna's illusory energy, his Maya, is so strong. So it's very, very strong. And the second reason that Srila Prabhupada gives is that a little diversion can create chaos, even to those who are advanced. So what to speak of devotees like myself, who is practicing and, finds it difficult on a day-to-day basis to remain focused. So from my perspective, this is sobering, right? So I guess the question is what, if advanced devotees can have fall down, what hope do we have to make it to the spiritual world? Now, that's one way of looking at it. Now, we also note that the ruler in this prayer isn't lamenting the situation of the conditioned soul or blaming Maya, right? To the contrary, the ruler is saying, Lord, I understand this is your wonderful pastime, right? This is your wonderful pastime. Your illusory energy is wonderful, and I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. Now, this shows the quality of a devotee. If they don't understand something in relation to Krishna's creation, the blame is never on Krishna's side. If we feel the way I'm feeling for this verse, that it's sobering, and if I'm looking at it in a confused manner, the fault is on my end in terms of not understanding. So in terms of today's verse, the key discussion points that I wanted to just talk about is to look at or discuss the influence of Maya on the jiva, and why devotional service and surrender to the Supreme Absolute Truth is the only way of overcoming the grip of samsara, which is a cycle of birth and death, that we have been conditioned or subjected to for a very, very long time. Now, note in the purport how Srila Prabhupada mentions that Bharat Maharaj's little attachment to the deer caused him to suffer 2 more births. Note Srila Prabhupada does not use the words caused him to take 2 more births. He says suffer 2 more births. So in Srila Prabhupada's words, taking birth is suffering. So the first realization from this beautiful but sombering verse is that the goal of life is to finish our business of taking birth, or in Srila Prabhupada's words, taking suffering. If we stop the suffering of taking birth, then automatically death is not in the picture. And by stopping birth, we are no longer vulnerable to the influence of Maya. So to end the suffering of birth, we need to understand Maya and the role that she plays in the creation, in Krishna's Leela of creation. So as practicing devotees, we already know about Maya. So this is just a short summary. As we understand, there are 2 types of Maya. We have Krishna's Yoga Maya and Mahamaya, also known as Maya. Both we know are Krishna's Shakti or energy. And in some places we hear that both are one and the same, just performing different roles. Yogmaya predominantly exists in the spiritual world, and the role of Yogmaya is to cover the eyes or place a curtain in front of Krishna's devotees in order to enhance Krishna's pastime with his devotees, or she makes them forget who Krishna is. So, for example, in the pastime of the Agasur pastime, Krishna's cowherd friends, they can figure out that Agasur is a huge snake with his eyes wide open. And they are discussing this whilst making their way into the mouth of Agasur. So they are saying things like, hey, look, Krishna, that looks like a huge snake, right? His mouth is wide open as if it wants to eat us alive. And speaking this way, laughing and looking at the beautiful face of Krishna, they happily enter the mouth of Agasur. Now, they do this even before Krishna can respond and warn them. So why does this happen? It happens because of the arrangement of Yogmaya. So, even Krishna, so Yogmaya makes them forget that the danger that's before them, and just in order to enhance the Krishna Leela. Now, Yogmaya even makes Krishna forget who he is. So Krishna in that Leela, he starts contemplating how to kill Agasur to save his friends. In the same way that Yogmaya makes Mother Yashoda forget that her child is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Now, the same with the gopis. All this is facilitated by Yogmaya so that they can each enjoy with Krishna and possess Krishna. So the pastimes become very, very sweet. So that is Yogmaya. And note, Yogmaya also exists in the material world and assists the jiva when the jiva is fully surrendered to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. However, for most of us, we are under, every second, every minute, we are under the influence of Maya. So this other Maya or Mahamaya exists in the material world, made up of the three gunas, and her job is to keep the jivas in the material world due to our forgetfulness of our real identity as spirit souls. So like Srila Prabhupada mentions in the purport that moha or illusion is to think that I am this body and everything connected to this material body is mine, and this is how we become entrapped in the jaws of Maya. Now, both Mayas, as we know, is Krishna's Shakti. However, Mahamaya is further divided into two Shaktis. One is called Avarnatmika Shakti, which is the covering potency, where one's true knowledge of their relationship with Krishna is covered. So, for example, when we associate with this body and start believing that I'm this body, then we are covered by the covering potency of Maya. Then there is another potency, which is the Prashupatmika Shakti, which is the throwing down potency. Now, this is when we understand that we are servants of the Lord, but due to our previous vasanas and samskaras, during our spiritual journey, if we develop lust, greed, pride, and even offenses at the lotus feet of great devotees, then Maya uses this potency of throwing us back into illusion. So, one is, if we look at the, 99.9% of the population out there, they don't know that they are spirit souls. So they are being covered by the covering potency of Maya. And then there are those, who do understand their real identity. They are in the spiritual journey. They're trying to elevate themselves. But each time we get subjected to lust, anger, greed, etc., then Maya throws us back to remind us of our position. So in other words, it helps us, but then again we constantly get thrown back. So next up, we look at why does Maya keep us entrapped in the material world? Now, it is said that this is due to 5 kleshas that we possess from our previous conditionings, or also known as our vasanas. And unless we remove this fully, it is very, very difficult to get out of the material world. Now, as we know that 3/4 of Krishna's creation is in the spiritual world, this 1/4 creation is where the jivas that are, that need reforming are placed. So we need to remove these 5 kleshas before we can go back to the spiritual world. Now, the 5 kleshas, we'll look at this very, very quickly. This information is taken from the Patanjali Yoga Sutra. And so the 5 kleshas are avidya, asmita, or our false ego, rag and dvesh, so attachment and aversion, and abhinivesha, so fear of death. So we'll just quickly go through each one of these. So of these 5 kleshas, or afflictions or sufferings or diseases, it is said that avidya is said to be the root cause of our suffering, and avidya is the reason, the root cause of how we landed into the material world when we chose to serve our senses rather than choosing to serve our master. So avidya exists, and it lets us keep on taking birth and death. The antidote or the remedy for avidya is sambandha gyan, so understanding or reviving our spiritual position in terms of self-realization, understanding who we are and what is our relationship with Krishna, and that is real knowledge. Material knowledge, in Srila Prabhupada's words, is called shilpa, and shilpa basically translates into trade, so something that we possess to feed our belly. It feeds the belly, but not the soul. We need to feed both the belly as well as the soul in order to attain peace. So avidya is the root cause of all the sufferings. Then we have asmita. Asmita means this is me. So false identification of the self with the mind, body, and our intellect. It makes us think that I am the doer. This is me and this is mine. The remedy or antidote for smashing our ego is to lead a life of austerity and understanding that the human life is for austerity. So human life is meant for tapasya. It is not for feeding the mind and senses. Then the third suffering is raga or attachment. Now, this suffering is attachment to things that give us pleasure. And so because they give us pleasure, we cling to these things, and we create dependencies. So addictions is caused by raga or attachment. Also, we crave for these attachments that we create for ourselves. The antidote for raga attachment is what Krishna speaks of in Bhagavad Gita when he says that sannyas is not the cessation of activity, but to give the outcome or results of that activity. Now, it does not mean indifference. Indifference would mean that we don't care. So, the antidote is to continue doing what we are doing, but not to be attached to the results. So, whereas attachment is taking what I can get out of a situation. Now, the perfect example of raga is Dhritarashtra and Duryodhan. Now, Dhritarashtra was so attached to the throne, and therefore, despite knowing that Duryodhan was doing everything wrong, he did not do anything to stop him because he was attached. If we look at attachment versus affection, so we should still have affection towards people, right? But we should not get attached to our loved ones. So that's the key point that Krishna speaks of when he talks about, don't give up the activity, but give up the outcome of results, which is really, really difficult to do. But if we need to remove this klesha of attachment, then that's the antidote. Then we look at the next one, which is dvesha, aversion or repulsion. So raga and dvesha go side by side. So things that we like, we get attached to. Things that we don't like, we repulse them. So we don't want those. So it's to avoid things that give us unpleasant experiences. So instead, we crave for pleasurable things. And so again, the antidote, as Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita 2.14, he speaks of experiences such as pain and pleasures like the seasons. They come and go, and a spiritualist should learn to tolerate both. So matra sprashta tu konteya. So that verse teaches us that pain and pleasure both should be tolerated. So even pleasurable experiences should be tolerated rather than enjoyed, because one should understand that if I am getting enjoyment today, it is the cause of suffering tomorrow. So we should be looking at it in an equipoised manner. And the fifth klesha is abhinivesha, which is fear of death or clinging onto life, or fear of loss. Now, when one of the other four kleshas exists, then Maya instills fear and anxiety by making us cling to the body. Now, deep down, everyone knows that they have to die and that they cannot capture time. And therefore, without self-realization, we cling to life, or we fear death because death will take it all away. And so as a result of that, because we're clinging onto that, this cycle of suffering continues, life after life, species after species. Again, the remedy for this klesha is to take shelter of the Lord. In fact, Srila Prabhupada has given us the remedy for removing all the kleshas by giving us the direct path through one spiritual master to take the process of pure devotional service. So even though I've spoken about the remedy for each one, Srila Prabhupada has given us one remedy that takes care of all the suffering. So if we look at it in terms of how do we overcome these kleshas, so even though Srila Prabhupada has given us the direct path, if we were to break this into small bite-sized pieces to aid our understanding, to aid my understanding, then we should understand that getting rid of these kleshas, the first thing to understand is that it is very difficult because, it's difficult even for practicing devotees because our vasanas, also known as our previous conditioning, is very, very strong. And these impressions are deep-rooted. But the starting point, it is said, is to let go or to learn to let go of sense objects. And so Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita 6.5, in response to Arjuna's question, or Arjuna's response that it is very difficult to control the mind. So in 6.35, Krishna says that there are two things. He first acknowledges, yes, it's difficult, but there are two things that we must do. One is practice, so abhyasa, and the second is detachment or renunciation, vairagya. So, but we can only do this if we experience higher taste. So in order to let go of the lower taste, one must experience higher taste, and we can only get that higher taste by devotional service. Now, and one of the ways that Srila Baldev Vidyabhushan is one of the great acharyas in Gaudiya Vaishnava tradition. Now, he says that one way to let go of sense objects is to see the fault of sense objects. When one realizes the fault of sense objects, then one automatically gives it up. And he says there are two types of faults in sense objects. The first is that they are sense objects, the gratification that we get from sense objects are temporary, and it leads to suffering. So it's packaged. So Maya's role is to package the sense objects in a wrapper of happiness, but actually inside the wrapper is only suffering, dukkha yoni, and in this way we are tricked. So how do we see this? And I thought this was very, very interesting because he says that, we don't see this by experience, because those who are not practicing bhakti, they also suffer, but they can't see the faults of sense objects. It's only when you perform devotional service or when you perform bhakti, through the eyes of Shastra, we can see the faults of sense objects. And, we can then really understand that it's a wrapper of happiness, but actually inside it's suffering. So those who are not on the path of bhakti, they also suffer. But the difference is that they still have that veil of curtain in front of their eyes and they just can't see it. So he encourages practicing devotees that rather than following our inclinations, because even though as practicing devotees, we are on the path, with still time and again, we still have that craving. The kleshas still, they still keep coming back as inclinations. So the solution, he says, is to follow scriptures. So rather than following our inclination, we follow scriptures. So that's one thing to look at. Then we also see that Srila Prabhupada mentions in many of his lectures that Maya means that which is not. We think we are independent, but actually we are servants of Krishna. And the reason why we are suffering is because our true nature, which is Satchidanand, we are naturally looking for happiness, but unfortunately at the wrong place, because this place is only dukkhalam ashashvatam, so temporary and full of suffering. And Maya does not make it easy for us, because her job is to keep us trapped here. And both potencies of Maya, the covering potency and the throwing down potency, they work hand in hand to keep the soul bound, and thus life after life we create this endless loop of suffering, birth after birth. And so, as we write in the beginning, in the translation itself, the ruler of the Varsha is saying, he's not blaming Maya. So blaming Maya is not going to get us anything. Instead, he's saying to Krishna that, because Maya is very, very good at doing her job. So, and Maya is Krishna Sakti. So the ruler and the residents are praising the Lord and saying that your illusory, this is your pastime. It's a wonderful pastime, and your illusory energy is wonderful. So, for me, that's a key learning, because there's no point in always saying that Maya is keeping us here, but it's about us removing ourselves from Maya. Maya is a servant of the Lord, and therefore, as Srila Prabhupada explains in the verse that's on the slide, that every living being is anxious for full freedom. That's actually what we're looking for, full freedom, because that is our transcendental nature. And this freedom is only obtained through transcendental service of the Lord. Serving Krishna frees us, it sets us free, and it removes all the kleshas. It is not easy. It is very, very difficult. And each time we feel it's difficult, we've got to look at it as that, my previous inclination is what I need to overcome. And this is why I'm feeling this way. And that's why one of the key things that is always stated for us practicing devotees is to practice devotion in the association with devotees, because together we can definitely achieve more in terms of removing all these kleshas. So the next point that I wanted to discuss very briefly is that why a liberated soul falls. So, why does a liberated soul fall or become a victim of Maya? Now, as we understand, a living entity becomes transcendental when he is completely detached from matter and is completely attached to the Supreme Lord through pure devotional service. However, this verse tells us that a living entity can be transcendental. He can be transcendental, but he can never be unlimitedly powerful. And that and it is because of that reason he or she can fall into the clutches of Maya, because only the Supreme Personality of God, Krishna, is both transcendental as well as unlimitedly powerful. Now, this verse is telling us that no one in the material world is immune to illusion, regardless of their status. And Srila Prabhupada uses the word, never think that you are immune in the purport. No one is immune to falling into Maya. So, and there are, again, very many examples in the Bhagavatam where this is shown. Bharat Maharaj's example is mentioned in the purport. Are there any other examples that devotees in the forum can share? Where we have, very highly elevated souls that have been illusioned.
Ajamil.
Ajamil, yes, that's a very good example. Yes, he became attached to a prostitute, and therefore he, fell back into Maya. Good example. Any other ones?
That is
Durvasa Muni?
Yeah,
Yes, yes.
Shaburi
Because of
Muni.
his pride, yeah. Any others?
That's Shaburi Muni.
Yes, yes.
Under the water, yeah.
What about Lord Brahma? Became
Yes.
bewildered by Lord's Maya during the Brahma Vimona Lila.
Lila,
What bewildered him was Krishna's simple pastimes with the cowherd boys. So he wanted to test the Lord.
Or Parikshit Maharaj? Mataji? Parikshit
Yes,
Maharaj.
yes. Parikshit Maharaj's example is there. Who else? Indra.
Indra.
Yes. Yeah, Indra, when he caused offense of the Lord's garland when it was offered to him by his guru. And so instead of accepting it as the Lord's prasad, the offense caused him to suffer the birth of a hog, a pig. And Maya made him forget his actual position, even when Brahma came in, tried to remind him. So can you see, for myself, the influence of Maya is so strong. So, sombering verse, but it is definitely telling us, be on your guard. And then, Govardhan Ila, Indra, again, when the Vrajvasis stopped his worship and started worshipping the Supreme Lord, his pride caused him to fall into Maya. He forgot the position of his supreme, his Lord. So he gets his power from Krishna, and he forgets that, and thus Krishna had to teach him. And of course, we know the example of Lord Shiva. got bewildered when he wanted to behold the Lord's incarnation as Mohini Murti. So I guess the verse is reminding us that no one is immune to illusion, regardless of their status. Therefore, it teaches us to be cautious and never to drop our guard. Moving on, so we've talked a lot about Maya and how we fall into Maya. So how do we overcome Maya's influence? So we have to be very careful, and we've got to follow the principles of devotional service very rigidly. Now, why rigidly? We're not fanatics. We often hear that word, that we're not fanatics. So why do we need to be rigid? After all, we are, under the shelter of the Supreme Lord. Now, we need to follow this rigidly because in the purport, Srila Prabhupada mentions that even a little inattentiveness can cause great chaos. And Krishna reminds us the same in Bhagavad Gita that, he tells us, my Maya is very, very difficult to overcome. But then at the same time, in that same verse, he gives us hope that it's possible to overcome it when you take shelter of me. So it's not all gloom and doom, because there are three things that can help us overcome the grip of Maya. One is surrender to Krishna. So Krishna promises to protect us when we surrender unto him. For example, again, we've seen examples of where devotees, even demigods fell into Maya. But then in the same way, we see examples from the Bhagavatam where surrender to Krishna actually saves one from Maya. So we see the example of Draupadi. In the royal assembly, when Dushasan was trying to disrobe her, she initially tried to get protection from everyone else, her husbands, her elders, everyone that was present, but it was only Krishna who helped her. So when she surrendered to him. In the same manner, we understand that Uttra, she would have heard this story. And so she remembered this when Ashwatthama tried to kill her and her unborn child, Maharaj Parikshit. So she did not seek protection from anyone, right? So she went directly to Krishna. So Krishna says to those who surrender to me, I preserve what they have, and I give what they lack. So, we may not have the power to outsmart Maya, but she is serving Krishna. So if we are fully surrendered to Krishna, we are safe. So that's the first solution. The second was having faith in Krishna. So over here, no matter what comes my way, a devotee should think that no matter what comes my way, Krishna is my only well-wisher. And so over here we see the difference between Arjun and Duryodhan. Arjun choosing Krishna's company over Krishna's powerful army. Now, where does faith come in here? Arjun's purpose to visit Krishna was to get support or help for Yudhishthira, right? For them to win the war. For this, what he needed was alliances. He needed army and weapons. But Arjun choosing Krishna over Krishna's army confirms his full faith in whatever the outcome is. As long as I have Krishna on my side, everything is okay. So that's faith. Even in very challenging times, our faith can be shaken. But that's the time when we should just need to hang in there. The third thing is tolerate challenges that come our way. Now, the mental disposition of practicing devotees should be, whatever material turbulence that come my way, I must learn to tolerate it. Again, example of the Pandavas and Kunti Maharani, they went through so much suffering, but they tolerated that. They did not just tolerate it, they tolerated it with grace. So during suffering, if we tolerate it, we gain the mercy of Krishna. Now, in addition to these are the three key things, but in addition to these three things, what helps us immensely is the power of prayers. And so we discuss that in the next slide. So one very powerful weapon that Srila Prabhupada personally showed us is by example, is the power of prayers. Now there's this beautiful story of when of Srila Prabhupada, when a disciple saw Srila Prabhupada praying to Krishna Balram and Radha Shyam Sundar, and Srila Prabhupada was praying very expressively, like, very feelingly. And when he finished praying, the disciple asked Srila Prabhupada, "What did you pray for?" And does anyone remember what Srila Prabhupada said? Srila Prabhupada said, I pray to the Lordships that I may never fall prey to Maya. So the disciple was bewildered and he said, Srila Prabhupada, you are a Mahabhagavat, right? You can never fall prey to Maya. And so Srila Prabhupada says to him, I am teaching you, no matter how advanced you are, you should never think that you can't be tricked by Maya. So, we understand that, that even from the scriptures, we understand that Srila Prabhupada is a Shakti Abhesha avatar. We know that it's not possible for Maya to touch him, but even then he is teaching us by his personal example that we must pray to the Supreme Lord, that we don't fall prey to Maya, because falling prey to Maya would hinder our spiritual progress. So, to keep ourselves safe from the clutches of Maya, daily we should be asking for help and protection and support from the Lordships. So whatever mercy we have today is because of Srila Prabhupada and his teachings, and he is teaching us to pray to Krishna to keep us safe. And so our prayers should be somehow or other, Krishna, by our own choice, we have fallen in the clutches of Maya. Please help and guide me in my spiritual life. And actually, every morning when we sing Narshim, when we say our Narshim Arti, we are seeking for protection. So really, when we think of it, as much as this verse is sombering, the process that Srila Prabhupada has given us is protecting us. So, we forever remain indebted to him. In terms of concluding words, although this is a sombering verse that we're discussing, at the same time, we should balance it with hope, taking into account the personal promise of the Supreme Lord. And, whilst we acknowledge the path is difficult, if we follow the instructions of Krishna given to him, given by him in Bhagavad Gita, then we will be able to overcome the influence of Maya. In Srila Prabhupada's own words, if we execute Krishna consciousness in the right way, then it will be possible, even in this very life, to be perfect. And as we know, it is not by our own endeavor that we can surpass Maya. No, Srila Prabhupada says that the key difference between Karmi yogis, Jnanis, Ashtanga yogis, and a Krishna Bhakta is that every other yogi, like Karmi yogis, they think that with pious actions, Jnanis with knowledge, and yogis with austerities, that they can deliver themselves. But the answer is no. We can never do that by our own efforts. We can only overcome and get Krishna's mercy with pure devotional service. So serving the absolute truth in his personal form. And that can only happen through devotional service. How is Krishna's mercy earned? Through the words of Srila Rupa Goswami, by carefully following the process of Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti. He mentions this in Nectar of Instructions, verse 3. To advance in spiritual life, we must accept things that are favorable for devotional service, and to give up or reject unfavorable things. And this accepting and giving up should be done with enthusiasm, with confidence, and with patience. And so I am hearing what some of you are thinking, but Mataji, this is easier said than done. But here is my realization. We must continue this journey. We definitely know we are on the best path, and as long as we continue and we don't deviate, Krishna will help us. Krishna as Super Soul will help us if we are sincere. So my final point to myself is that we should not worry too much about Maya if we execute Krishna consciousness perfectly. What does perfectly mean? To me, perfectly means to the best of what I am capable of. Now, I have a spiritual development plan that Krishna is overseeing. If I promise to do my part and I leave the rest in the powerful hands of Krishna, then I can definitely say that I'm in good hands. And what does a pure devotee pray for? They don't pray for anything other than life after life, as long as they are still in the same path and they understand the position of the Supreme Lord, then they consider that they are in safe hands. So with that, I will end the class here. And I haven't recapped, have I? So just very quickly to recap, the central theme is exclusive devotion to Krishna in his personal form. It is a sombering verse because it tells us to be cautious. No one is immune, not even advanced devotees. That's what we looked at. And a little inattentiveness can cause fall down. But then at the same time, not everything is gloom and doom, because we should never forget that Maya is a subservient of to her master Krishna, and so she's a servant of Krishna, and therefore Krishna's mercy. If we are surrendered to Krishna, and then Krishna helps us overcome Maya, and Krishna's mercy is available to each one of us with the mercy of Srila Prabhupada. So I'll end here. Grant Raj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. So I will stop sharing and appreciate if anyone can add on to what I've covered or add their realizations. I always like the way that His Grace Mother Govind Prabhu ends his class, but by asking the audience, what are your realizations? Are there things that, what did you learn from this verse? So I'll end here, and I'm so sorry. I think I have gone over time.
Thank you, Mataji. Very nice class. You very nicely unpack this verse, especially this verse is sovereign verse, and how we influence with the Maya, how we fall down. And it's a means to think about that, how we should not fall in the Maya, but Maya will come, and how you nicely discuss about the influence of Maya. Yeah, it's only devotional service and surrender to the Supreme Absolute Truth in his personal form, in the only way to overcome the grip of samsara. And the Jogmaya's work and Mahamaya's work you have told, and nicely we discussed about that Avaranatmika Shakti covering potency and Prakashatmika throwing down potency. And how kleshas come with 5 kleshas, you discuss nicely. And this one I heard, I think, first time, or maybe forgot, but nicely you have discussed about the ignorance, egoism, raga, desha, and Obhinesha, yes, very nice to discuss. And also you have given the example of everything about that, and why it is heaven, how it is doing, how we have to come out from this one antidote. Main come out is the so that bhakti yoga, and we have to perform our bhakti yoga nicely, rigidly. And though Arjuna is telling it's very difficult, our मन is chanchal, but ubhyasanatu kanteya vairagyanatu grihate. Yeah, it is possible. We all are getting hope, and every day, like your class, yes, we can come out from the clutches of Maya. And yeah, with this, the overcome, you have telling about the surrendering and faith on Krishna and tolerant. Yeah, this is the 3 important points. And yes, prayer is very important in that Srimad Bhagavatam. In every canto there is prayer. And yes, we have to take shelter for this. And we have to serve. We are doing service to Lord Radha Giridhari. With that, your nectar of devotion verse 3, Utsaho Nishchay Dhariyat. For this way, we can come out and we will reach the goal surely with the Devotees Association. Thank you, Mataji. This is very inspirational class. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Okay. Thank you, Mataji, for the nice summary. Thank you. Cool. I think we can end here. And again, my apologies, I have gone over time.
No, Mataji,
So-
all good. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha
Kripā
kripa
sindhubhya
sindhubhya
evacha
patitānaṁ pāvanebhyo
Vaishnaveभ्यो
वैष्णवेभ्यो
वैष्णवेभ्यो
नमो
नमो
वैष्णववृंद
नमो
की
नमः।
जय, Rangadevi Mataji ki
Srila
jai,
Prabhupada
Srila
ki
Prabhupada ki
jai.
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 All glories to assembled devotees. Hare
Everybody
Hare
say
Krishna.
Krishna.
Thank you, Mataji. Hare Krishna. Very
Hare
nice.
Krishna.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Mataji.